Just want to mention one thing before I turn to the introduction of the keynote. There are white papers that were authored by one of our panelists, Federica Fusi, and another colleague in our college, Nebiyu Tilawan, who are on our website, the Urban Forum website. So you just navigate your way onto that, and then click on the white papers tabs, and you'll see the papers listed there under 2023. So now I'm going to turn and introduce, we have quite a treat coming up, our keynote speaker. And again, thank you to Adam and our panelists for a great discussion. Our keynote speaker is Derek Eder. I'd just like to invite Derek to move towards the stage here. Derek is founder and partner at DataMade, a data and web consultancy for civil society working towards democracy, justice, and equity. He's also co-founder and president of what many know in the room is Chi-Hack Night, a free weekly event in Chicago to build, share, yay, Chi-Hack Night. Build, share, and learn about tools to create, support, and serve the public good. I would add that Chi-Hack Night has become an institution in Chicago in so many ways. Through his work, he has built and collaborated on dozens of civic data applications, including Second City Zoning, Chicago's $1 Million Blocks, Councilmatic, Decarb My State. Derek is an entrepreneur, a developer, a leader of the civic technology community in Chicago, and I would say, if you ask him who he is, he would probably just say he uses data, builds tools, organizes people in Chicago to democratize power. Folks, let's welcome Derek Eder. Thank you so much.
All right. Is it still morning? Good morning. Hi, I'm Derek Eder. This is my talk. I will attempt to answer the question, can data deliver? It's the theme of this morning. First, a few things about me. I wear a few different hats, as was mentioned. Chi-Hack Night, I am the founder and now president emeritus of Chi-Hack Night. As a show of hands, who here has been to Chi-Hack Night before? Yeah, excellent, awesome. So some of you are familiar. For those of you who are not, it's a weekly event. We meet every Tuesday to build, share, and learn about civic tech. We hear from presenters. Actually, I know there's some presenters here in the room with us today. And also we have a space for people to build technology and tools using data to really try to understand and learn and build towards civic solutions. This is a picture of Chi-Hack Night. Don't worry, this is pre-pandemic, so that's why no one's wearing masks. But this is a group of us. We've been around, as I think has already been mentioned, for about 10 years. Pre-pandemic, we're probably averaging about 100 people a week. Now, this sort of coming out of the pandemic, we're at maybe 30 to 50 every week, so it's starting to tick back up again. We have a number of people who've presented over the years, several hundred presenters. Again, some of those folks are in this room. We record them all. We put them up on YouTube. So if anybody's interested in seeing this vast archive of what civic problems people are working on in Chicago and also around the world, this is a great resource for you. And we've been meeting every week just about for over 10 years. And last July, we had our 500th episode. This is me and a former board member, Emily Drevitz, co-hosting that event. Last night, actually, we hosted our 537th event. So we just keep going. This is our board of directors. We recently incorporated as a non-for-profit organization. We're actually membership-based, so people can attend Chi-Hack Night and then apply to become members and then eventually join the board. You've already seen and heard from some of those previous and current board members here. Lori's one, Adam Heckman here, and myself are all on the board. And the thing that I think is really kind of what sets us apart from other events is that there is a build component. There's a doing component, very much inspired by hackathons, if anyone's ever been to one, except hopefully not so toxic as a hackathon in that it's like extracting work from people over their weekends and giving them pizza in return. We make a space that you show up for a couple hours a week, you work on the projects you want to work on, and you do it over week over week. Some projects, some groups meet just once. Some groups have been meeting for literally years and have launched businesses and non-for-profits out of Chi-Hack Night. So we take that idea of doing work all in one place, and we sort of sustain it over a period of time and create that space going forward. Plus, we give you food, so that helps. This is a sampling of some of the projects that are going on at Chi-Hacknight right now. There's been hundreds over the years. Right now you've already heard from Lori about ghost buses, tracking what buses are coming and which ones are not. Chi Commons Cooperative is a co-op, and they do tech support for folks, and they are actually working to build community-based internet. The map of all the states is a project I worked on called Decarbonize My State. It's a website that takes all the information about where emissions are coming from for every state and then shows you how it's broken down by transportation or by buildings or by power generation, and then gives you some ways of changing that, mostly through electrification. And then the last example here is a project called Civi Social, and they're trying to aggregate a bunch of legislative data, not just at the federal level, but at the county and the city level, to put that information in front of residents. You type in your address, and you can see all the bills and legislation that are being discussed in your particular area across these different legislative bodies. So just a sampling of them. The other hat that I wear is I am a partner at DataMade. It's a consulting company, a civic consulting company that I started back in 2012. We work with partners working towards democracy, justice, and equity. We do a lot of work. This is our team. We're small, but we're mighty. There's just 7 of us. We do a lot of work with local organizations here in the academic space, in the government space, journalism, and non-for-profit. You can see some of those logos you might recognize. And we do a number of different projects. Data, as you could probably imagine, is the theme that sort of connects everything together. We're all about collecting data, organizing data, synthesizing data, and oftentimes making publicly accessible websites to look at that data and gain insights from it. So I won't talk about every single one of these projects here. I don't have time. Oh, and by the way, we have everything is on GitHub. We are really big into open source, and that's something that I think is a pretty common thing in the sort of civic tech space, and it's something we live both at Chi-Hacknight. We're always putting projects out there in open source, but also as a private company, DataMade, we also put as much of the work that we can out on open source so people can benefit from it. Switching to how can data deliver. I think it's always best to show and not tell, so I will show you some examples broken down over a couple of different categories that I've seen. All these projects I'm about to show you, I worked on personally, and the teams involved in them are actually pretty small, maybe 2 to 4 people at most. Here's the first example that I learned about what you can do with data when I first got started. This was something that was really common. There's all this data Nick mentioned on the data portal. There's just a treasure trove of information about the city. And so one place you can really start if you want to get involved with using data is just go on that data portal and see what's there and think if I think the Better Data Portal is a great example of like taking what's out there and then building something on top of it. So that's a whole category of civic app that I've personally worked on and lots of people have as well. This is the example I'm going to give. Second City Zoning. Anybody seen this website before? All right, who here has played SimCity? Yes, I figured it's urban forum, probably a few folks. This is a website that actually is inspired by SimCity 2000, if I'm dating myself a little bit. It's a game I played a lot when I was growing up. We took the city's 350-page zoning ordinance and we put it on a website that you could very easily search and find all the different zoning codes and categories in the city of Chicago. And the gimmick behind it is that in SimCity, green is residential, yellow is industrial, blue is commercial. So we're like, let's just take that theme and use it to make this thing, which is kind of boring probably for a lot of people, zoning, and make it more fun and exciting and accessible. I do know that the color, I've talked to planners, I know the colors are not the official colors that a lot of planners use. It's okay. This is not for them. This is for folks who really just want to start to learn about this information, and this is a way, like a way to sort of peg into that example that people maybe you're already familiar with. So we built this website. It is today continues to be one of the more popular websites day to day as far as traffic goes. We still get tons of people going to this website. I know for a fact that folks at the Department of Planning and Development have this, some people have had this bookmarked on their computers because it is an easier way to look up zoning than some of the other tools that are available. And so it's a tool that it started off a little bit as a gimmick, but it actually does contain really valuable, useful information. And I think this tool has actually helped broaden who actually has access to this data and how you can find it. If you were wondering about copyright infringement, I was too, but we just went and published it anyways. It turns out that this is one of the designers that works at Maxis that built SimCity and actually continue to build SimCity games. They saw our website, and instead of suing us, they said, "Great job, we're very inspired by this, so yay." I'm really happy that we got to get this a little bit of praise from something that I really loved myself. Another kind of category of what folks can do with data is you can hold government accountable. This is a project that DataMade worked on in partnership with the Better Government Association, now known as the Illinois Answers Project, Chicago Reporter, Justice Watch, and some folks at UChicago, a number of others, to essentially collect all the data that exists in the Cook County criminal court system. These are systems that I think still live on mainframe computers or older systems, and it's very hard for folks to access. We were able to use those partnerships that we have to be able to scrape all this data, put it into one database, and then train and work with journalists to do stories about systemic issues in the Cook County criminal court system. So we are training journalists. We're building up that capacity in newsrooms, which is really needed to look at all this data, which is it's pretty messy. It's it's fixed width kind of data. There's a lot of charges codes that are really out of sync with each other, just because this is probably 20 years worth of data and something around 2 million rows of data. We've worked directly with journalists to help them publish a number of stories about systemic issues in Cook County, the criminal court system. There's a few of these. Some of them are looking at patterns of practice and behavior by judges. Other ones looking at gun possession charges and writing these stories that would not be possible otherwise, because we're looking at data sort of at the longer view and not just the sort of headline that you're seeing as far as what's happening now. It's looking at this longer view and giving you this contextualized view of what's going on. Another kind of category of what you can do with data is you can really push for policy changes. This is a project that I worked on with some folks in 2014 called Chicago's $1 Million Blocks. It's a website that takes sentencing data for about over a 5-year period, and it looks at individuals and how long their sentences were, and it aggregates them up by census block. So every little shape you see on that map is a census block in Chicago. We aggregate those sentence years up, and then we multiply it by a rough calculation of how much it costs to incarcerate somebody in the state of Illinois for 1 year. It's about, at least when we did this, it was about $22,000. And we multiply that all together and add it up, and that is where the name of the website comes from, $1 Million Blocks. We are spending millions of dollars on certain blocks in the city of Chicago, predominantly, as you can see, on the west and the south sides, to incarcerate people who used to live there. And this is a tool that we built. It's obviously, especially compared to the ones I've shown you already, it's pretty opinionated. We are saying this is not a good use of resources. In fact, there are better ways to address these issues, from a policy perspective. The recidivism rate in Illinois, last I checked, was about 50%, meaning that you have a 50% chance once you get out of prison of going back in within 3 years. And that's just a really terrible outcome. And there are other ways that we can get at that do not involve locking people up. So this is a website that really is meant to be provocative. Obviously, the colors are very stark, the red and the black. And it's really meant to reframe this issue. We launched this again in 2014, and I think a lot of conversations have evolved, certainly not just from this website, but this was one of those early examples that I know lots of activists used as something to point to. Look, this is a real thing. Look at how this data is showing up here and how it's impacting our lived experiences. This website got a ton of attention, especially when we launched it. Chris Hayes was tweeting about it. We got written up about it in the Washington Post. Black Lives Matter Chicago has used it locally. And I actually know that some folks at the White House, the Obama White House, were using this to refer to when it came to some of their conversations around justice initiatives. So this is an example of a project that, because of that frame, it's a bit of a evocative title, $1 Million Blocks. You might think it's potentially like about real estate or something, and then you dive in and you see what it's really about. It really did bring a lot of people into this awareness of what the situation was. So, and then the last example of how it got used is we did get some local news coverage on this. If anybody watches Mike Flannery, he was fired up about this one, showing off the $1 Million Blocks website on local news. Okay, so last example that I'm going to talk about is one that actually we did really recently around making government programs more accessible to reach more residents. This is a website called Shy Block Builder. It's actually a kind of an evolution of a project we did back in 2015 called Large Lots, where the city owns around on the order of 10,000 lots that have been, either foreclosed on and then eventually landed, in the city's ownership role. And the buildings have been demolished there, and there's just kind of these sort of green, empty lots. The city has so many of them, and they're really, they're not generating any tax revenue. People aren't really doing anything with them, and so a policy decision was made to sell those lots back to residents. And the success of Large Lots was so great that the city decided to make that the way that property will be sold across the board. So we built a map. This is very similar to how we did it with Large Lots, showing all the lots that are for sale, what their attributes are. You can see a little street view image of each of them. You can search for them, and then you can click, I want to apply for this lot, and fill out a form, and you can apply to purchase a lot. So this idea of taking what was before a pretty challenging way of purchasing land, requiring a lot of paper forms, requiring even just is it zoned properly? Does it meet the program requirements? Is it within the right area? We do all that work for you through this website so that it's all just about what's available, and it's kind of like a shopping cart. You pick the thing you want to buy, and you apply for it. And it's meant to really short circuit how much work and effort it takes, not just from the resident side, but also from the administrative side. It's a lot of work to review paper applications. This is all done digitally now. And we actually just closed a round back in February. We received over 1,600 applications for these lots, for around, I think, 1,000 lots. Is that right? Maggie's in the audience. She knows if you want to ask questions of her. But this is what's really awesome about this this project is you can see here. This is a high-level summary of the applicants. The majority of them are for affordable housing and for side yards. Side yards are people purchasing or applying to purchase the land that's literally next door to where they already live. In many cases that we found with Large Lots, folks were already taking care of these properties even though they didn't own them. And this was actually finally a way for them to claim ownership and actually legally own this property that they were stewarding for all those years. So this is an example of really using data and technology to, again, really bring this program, scale it up in a way that was reaching people that it really wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Okay, so pause here for a sip of water. You might think, I haven't answered this question. You might have a sense of what you think my answer might be. Well, can data deliver? Yes, I think it can. However, there's an asterisk next to that. It's not just data, right? It takes people. Do you have the right people? Do you have the right team to deliver these kinds of tools? I think it's worth stepping back and looking at how it is we were able to do all these different types of projects. And I really found that, in my experience, it's about the team that you put together, and it's about giving them the conditions to succeed. It really is, I think, about investing in people. You may have heard that phrase before. It is a phrase that has been said many times over by the mayor-elect Brandon Johnson, both during the campaign and also when he gave his victory speech a few weeks ago. I think that it really does apply here to what we're talking about. I think specifically what it means is we should invest in people first and then invest in technology. I know there were a lot of conversations about the excitement around new technologies. That's always the case, ChatGPT, very exciting, I love it. We'll see what we can do with it, but there's a lot of chasing of shiny technology that is just, I think, inherent that a lot of people want to do. I think technologists do it, but also, it's just an attractive thing to do. Blockchain, if anyone's ever heard of it, is like a common thing that people will chase after. But there's a lot of examples where it doesn't make any sense to use it. And I think that you need to have that insight to know about technology and data before you can really make a confident choice about choosing whether to invest in technology or not. It's not just about the big technologies, though, or the new ones. It's about any new system that you are thinking about building or procuring. I really don't think that government should outsource their technologists anymore. I really think that it's something that not just in the city, but also this is like a national trend over decades. There's just been a lack of technologists in city government, especially in places where they get to have some of the policy conversations that were talked about earlier. I really think that there's a bit of a lack of having a number of people that can do that kind of thinking and that strategy inside government. And I really think that the city and the county and the state and federal level should hire these technologists, right? I think there is a huge need for it. I think Lori mentioned this during the previous panel, and I'm in a complete agreement with that. But I don't just mean people to build stuff. I actually think that there's a value in having technologists in a lot of different conversations, in a lot of different places and departments. We're talking about, digital service delivery, which in many cases, that's what the Shy Block Builder was about, is the service delivery. But it's also about maintaining IT infrastructure, informing policy with that data, managing and measuring programs, and then also procurement. So I really think broadening this idea about what a technologist is, it's not just someone in an IT department who's keeping the lights on and making sure the emails are being sent. As important as that is, right? That is important. But technology is touching every part of our lives, and we absolutely need to have the folks that understand it in the room when decisions are being made, especially when technology is going to be utilized, which, again, in most cases, technology is being utilized for just about every aspect of our society. On that point about procurement, does anyone know who this is? It's a bit of a deep cut. This is Tom Steinberg. He is the founder and former executive director of My Society, which is a UK non-for-profit. Years ago, he actually visited Shy Hack Night and came to us saying that he was the ghost of Christmas future, and that if you've known anything about digital services in the UK, they've actually had some really great successes, and I'll show you a little bit what that looks like in a moment. But he saw what we were doing in Chicago and said, I think I see a little bit about what I was doing maybe 5 years before. Let me tell you what I've learned in the time since. And he told us lots of stories and gave us lots of really good advice. But one story really stuck with me that I'm going to share with you, which is the story of procurement. So say I am a technology vendor and you are someone who's going to purchase something from me. Or rather, just say anything in general, actually. You're going to procure anything from me, and I'm just a vendor. Say I'm going to sell you a chair. This is a chair. You can look at this chair. Let's just pick one of these random ones in front of us. You can look at it, and I'll say, hey, look, this is a chair. It's great. You can sit in it. It's made of metal and some kind of plastic. It's solid. You can look at this chair, and you can size it up and say, this is all right. This is a fine chair, nice chair. How much for the chair? And then I say, this chair is $1 million. You will scoff and probably kick me out of the office, and then the conversation will be over, and then you'll buy your chair for a reasonable price, right? The story switches when all of a sudden you replace a chair with technology. it is inherently difficult to look at, especially if you don't understand and are accustomed to building technology. It's very easy to look at something and not have any idea how to evaluate whether or not it's going to work, how it's going to work. Essentially, technology is a black box, right? Unless you actually are in there and understanding all these different pieces. And that's a story that Tom told me that I think still really applies today, right? If you do not have the right people in the room, especially when there's people who want to make money off of you, like to refute the BS and the snake oil salesman, you are going to cost your government and your taxpayers a lot of extra money that they don't need to spend. And so I think that is a story that, again, stuck with me, and hopefully it resonates with some folks here, and that it really does matter how to evaluate these different kinds of technologies and platforms before you really even go into procurement. So again, it's not just about building stuff, it's about actually hiring technologists who will actually save you money with managing your vendors. This, by the way, is GovUK. Has anybody heard of this site or been to it before? It's beautiful. You might think that this is a very utilitarian, boring website. Good. It's supposed to be. It's meant to be functional. It's not littered with press releases from the elected or their face or all sorts of things that have nothing to do with what people really care about when it comes to interacting with their government. They built this website from the ground up with user needs first, and it actually engineered it so that it's the top search result on search engines when someone says, I want to apply for a new driver's license, or I have to pay my bill. They put all of that information front and center, and it is today, I believe, the second most popular government website in the world. For some reason, number one is a Russian site. I'm not sure what that story is, but it's number two. We'll go with that. Cite Wikipedia. The other thing worth noting is that GovUK, when they launched it, they built it all in-house. And when they launched it, the first year of the operational cost, it cut their web service cost in half when they launched this brand new website, building it internally. So there is not just good user experience to be had, but there's actually some real savings, cost savings to be made when you invest in technology in this way. I will say, I'm a vendor, right? We do work for the city of Chicago, we do work for Cook County. It's actually a good thing to have technologists on the other side of the conversation. It is a recipe for disaster if the client doesn't understand what their trade-offs are and can't sort of fulfill basic needs around giving us data or giving us the answers to the questions we need and understanding fully what we're talking about. So as a vendor, I want more technologists in government to help those conversations because the outcomes are almost always better when there's that parity across the table. By the way, if you're interested in keeping up with GovUK, it's still around. They are constantly making it better. They have a blog, and you can check out all the different things that they're working on to improve how the site's working and how they're reaching residents and constituents. It's worth making, I've given a lot of examples of good uses of technology. It is worth talking about what happens when it doesn't go well. If anybody remembers healthcare.gov, anyone know that website? Cool. Signature policy for President Obama, Obamacare, big deal. It literally almost failed because of a website. And the website had a lot of the hallmarks of a traditional IT failure. There was the same old vendors, and they were not managed by people who understood the trade-offs with technology, and they wasted hundreds of millions of dollars and missed deadlines, and literally the whole project was going to fail until they realized, okay, we need to stop and bring in some people who actually understand this. And so that's what this Time article is about, is they called them Obama's trauma team, right? They brought in technologists to take over the process, to use the modern sort of agile development and all of those kinds of practices to do this project, right? And they were able to, the money, a lot of the money had already been spent, so it was definitely not going to recover that. But they were able to launch this website and do it in a modern way and do it successfully. And the story now is that healthcare.gov is obviously still working really well. But again, they had to have this really red alert moment, right, where they realized that the most important thing we're trying to accomplish is just not going to happen because we don't understand technology. And so it was a hard lesson for them to learn. Hopefully we can learn it without spending so much next time. There is a positive outcome to the Code Red, the healthcare.gov fiasco, which is that they did learn some lessons at the federal level, and they did put in place a number of new agencies, namely 18F and U.S. Digital Services. These are in-house technologists that work for government, and they actually consult with the different departments and agencies and do this kind of work. They do, usability design. They actually do procurement review. They build technology. They help manage vendors. So they are that brain trust at the federal government. So there is precedent for this, and this is, these are both agencies that have survived, all the way through the previous administration as well. It's something that's just part of government now at the federal level. Here's a few examples of some of the things they've been doing. They continue to do amazing work across all sorts of, there's just so many systems that need to be updated, and they're constantly working on that. Okay, so if you've seen what I think works, there's some themes that I think are worth recapping. What I think are essential for making this all work is these themes of service, accessibility, and equity, not just in the tools that people are making, but in the people that actually do them. These are, I think, values that are really important for technologists to adopt and to already have practice every day. And you might be thinking, okay, great, you've convinced me. I'm going to hire some technologists. There are certainly going to be challenges with that, right? we were having a sidebar conversation earlier. Pay is a challenge, right? Like, you can make more money in the private sector. And there are some challenges with changing that. I'm not sure what that would require to change, but that is a challenge. Another challenge is the culture of working for government can sometimes feel like you're being a little bit suppressed, and there's a bit of a cover yourself, don't make any mistakes kind of attitude that can percolate within certain departments. That's a really terrible environment for a lot of people to work in, and people will leave if they feel like they can't really do what they think is right. And so that's an area that is probably maybe a little easier to change, although it would take some time. But I'll say that a big positive the government has is that they're working on the most important problems. There are, you can graduate with a computer science degree and you can go work for one of these big technology companies and work on optimizing ads, or squeezing those pennies out of this, that, or the other service. Or you can go and help people get health care, or you can help reimagine what public safety looks like in the city of Chicago. There are so many amazing opportunities that only government actually has the power and authority to do. So that's a big plus that I think that a lot of folks in government could really lean on when it comes to hiring folks. Who do I hire? You might be thinking, yeah, we're going to hire some code ninjas, right? Or some rock stars, or some gurus, right? This is I hate these terms. It sort of puts this mystique around this idea of technologists. They're just people, just like there's a lot of us in the room right now, we're technologists, and we don't really identify with any of these words. So not those folks. The folks that you actually want, some of them actually might be right under your nose. There are a lot of people that already work for government, and they're just not given the opportunity to do the things that they know they can do. They sometimes just aren't given that cover from their bosses, or they're just not given the training or the opportunity. So there's a ton of people just under your nose that I think really can and want to do this kind of work. And by the way, they're already hired. So those are the easiest people to sort of try to transition into these new roles. But also, there's these people. There are literally hundreds of folks that come to Shy Hack Night, and they care about this stuff. And this is exactly the signal that I think validates that there are no shortage of people who want to work on these kinds of problems. It's just a matter of finding them and reaching out to them and building those pathways so that folks can join government. Because again, they're working on these problems that are pretty adjacent to what government's already doing. So there's already a passion and an interest and a demonstration of skill that's there. So go find them, and hey, come to Shy Hack Night and meet some of those folks. And that's it. That's my talk. Thanks, folks.
Thanks so much, Derek. Thank you, Derek, and all of our speakers today. I'm the only thing that stands between you and the rest of the day and lunch now. But before then, I want to just make a few remarks that summarize what we've heard today, because I think there's definitely some common threads through the panels and even that ran through Derek's remarks that we just heard. The conversations in the panels and the remarks from our keynote speaker have given us great insight into the potential of big data, the datafied city, for solutions, as well as the need for enough well-trained analysts. Thank you, Derek, for hammering that home. Data scientists and informed decision makers to ensure that data is properly overseen by humans, and any meaning made of data is made by skeptical and curious people who uphold values of equity, sustainability, and basic democratic principles necessary for our urban areas to thrive. From panel one, we heard about this concept of interoperability and how important that is to help our data systems talk to each other. We heard also about the need to engage multiple constituencies to understand how we can maximize the potential for data sharing, who's involved in that process. We also heard the dreams of our panelists where they wished we could seamlessly connect our systems across platforms, and the need for government to hire more tech folks who with the capacity that's distributed across all departments in a more balanced way. In panel two, we heard concepts of the need to respect the data. We need an infrastructure in place that protects and manages that data, and the need to flip our understanding of who owns the data and align how we hold our leaders accountable to that. And if you can't, this notion if you can't protect it that we heard from Rosie, should you collect it? Maybe we need to turn that into a slogan or something. And then really love Daniel highlighting the need to co-design data systems and tools with the folks who the data is about and who are most affected by what you're doing with the data. So in summary, I think we heard really about two human elements, those who build and manage the data and our need to support and build up that capacity and infrastructure, as well as respecting and still maintaining that we're working on behalf of those who the data is about. In closing, I'd like to say from all these great points and commentaries from our moderators, I hope you found something today that you can take away, new learning, or something that you can find some actionable or inspiring step to do in your work or field. And then I'd like to thank all our panelists and moderators and just reiterate the thanks that Dean White shared at the beginning with our thanks to our interim chancellor, our provost, Cook County President Preckwinkle, and all of our board of advisors. Dean White, yourself, thank you for your support for this. Our media partner, WBEZ, who helps us promote this event and share that it's happening. And most importantly, again, the planning team, Jenny Sweeney, Carla Bailey, and the Jaskolka Terman team, folks who are in the room with the questions and guiding people to where they need to go. Brian Flood, Marty Gutierrez, Norma Ramos, Jessica Cortez, all the research assistants, we don't want to forget research assistants who contributed or helped. And thank you for being here today and for coming and participating in this conversation. There are box lunches around the corner there in room C. Grab a box lunch, sit down, continue the conversation, or go about your day. Either way, thanks again for coming.